Okay, from our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tagged, we look at the week's top news and explain why it matters to business professionals in the theme entertainment space. And this week was San Diego Comic-Con, and so there's lots of talk of IPs floating around everywhere. So we thought we would
say, let's start by making a connection here, because I'm sure there are some listeners going, Comic-Con, great. This is a theme park show. Why are we talking about Comic-Con? And
I think what Scott and I were talking about before we got on the show was basically theme parks. This trend of using more and more IPs is a big trend we've been talking about in theme parks. And the question is, for a lot of the operators, how do you work with IPs and what IPs to work with? And I think it seems like this very unattainable goal to a lot of, especially smaller operators. And so we're like, let's link all these together. Let's look at what's going on at San Diego Comic-Con and how that relates to IP selection. And yeah, Scott.
Well, so Comic-Con, I mean, I have not been to San Diego Comic-Con. I've been to several other Comic-Cons, and I've got another one coming up next week. But the idea of going to a San Diego Comic-Con, that has become such a massive event that it's not just for comic nerds anymore. You know, I mean, it's so far surpassed that. And you had a chance to experience it this week, yes?
Yes.
So, what were some of the hot IPs and hot, activations that maybe even looking for somebody to pick them up as an IP?
So Comic-Con is interesting to give the context for people that haven't been, because it's a little different than any other Comic-Con. I go to a lot of conventions, anime and comic, in that whole fandom area. And Comic-Con is definitely the most unique. And if anything, I would say it's unique because of the IPs. Exactly what we're having this conversation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think Comic-Con isn't for the attendees. It's for the film studios and the press, and which is very different than a regular convention. So
many of my friends who are con goers have said the exact same thing. They're like, we don't even feel like we belong here anymore. And
yeah, it's very strange. I went as credentialed media. I was reporting on Comic-Con for Attractions Magazine, and we focused primarily on the activations, the themed environments. So it's exactly what we're talking about on the show, like the themed, how do you worlds you're walking through. I didn't report on any panels except for two of them, and we really focused on the things you could do in person. And that's what makes San Diego Comic-Con so unique, is that when you look at the attendance, it's maybe only 150,000 people, which is not massive. I mean, Anime Expo is supposedly 400,000. So this is like not close to that, except that counts the people that are going into the convention, like the badges that are going into the convention center. Mm-hmm. But with San Diego Comic-Con, most of the convention is not at the convention. It is in the, I would say 4 blocks that they closed down. So every hotel, every store, every space you could possibly put something in, a studio has come in with an IP and turned it into a themed environment.
Like Gen Con in Indianapolis. Gen Con did the same thing with every surrounding hotel, every ballroom, even the indoor stadium.
Everything, literally. And the thing is, you don't need badges for most of these, right? They're just activations. Even they build, so Disney Entertainment Studios, they had 4 activations this year, and all of theirs were just outside on the waterfront or in the park nearby, and they just put up walls and they just build an entire experience.
They're piggybacking. I mean, they know that there's going to be a huge influx of their target audience, and there's a lot of media attention, which I think is probably more important than the influx of target audience, and it gives them an opportunity to set up their platform, to set up their soapbox, to pitch their next great concept idea. As long as it's loosely related, it seems to fit in, I guess.
Well, so no, that's an excellent thought. So I was having this discussion with a few people about kind of what we were all doing here. It was a little weird meta discussion, right? Because some of us were in line for the fandom party, and it's kind of like, why are we all here? Like, what is the point of all this? And it's interesting. Like I said, I think it's for the studios and for the press, but it's interesting when we look at it in the IP lens, because recently there was that, I don't want to say complaint, but there was some of those articles about Pixar and Disney kind of being like, well, if you want to more original stories, you need to go support them in the theater, right? There was a kind of like they got negative press for that. And then there was a counter argument of, well, how much marketing do you put behind it? So then it gets you to think, what actually makes an IP popular? Is it the story itself? Like, is it a good story of telling the story, or is it the marketing that is put behind it? And when you're there at Comic-Con, I think you really see all that really starkly represented, because the people that put the money behind the IPs, that's where you get it. So it's not necessarily, I think, a question of the IP itself or even the fans of the IP. It's like that's there, but it's also the shiny object thing, like how much money they're going to put behind the activation, how cool it's going to be to do the thing itself, that kind of drives it. So, for example, Percy Jackson. So the ones that Disney did Abbott Elementary, they did King of the Hill, they did Percy Jackson, and they did Alien. Okay. Abbott Elementary had the whole area with the Ferris wheel. They made a whole block party where they gave away lunch boxes where you could go get your lunchbox engraved, and then you'd go pick it up at Lost and Found, right? So they would call your name. Oh, you lost your lunchbox, and here's your name's on it, right? They did custom caricatures where they would transform you into a character from Abbott Elementary and put you onto a poster. They did free shaved ice. All these are free, by the way. Everything here is free. That's another reason why they get so many people. Everything, all these activations are free, and they're open to everyone without badges or with badges, either way. So that's a lot to do for Abbott, right? But the popularity of the Abbott experiences was much less than that for the Alien or for the Percy Jackson one. But Percy Jackson, they're giving away either a really nice water bottle, like, a very nice water bottle, or a really nice cap that you get, and you get to go do the whole experience where you get to do a personality quiz and be chosen by a god and interact with the fates and interact, have a whole interactive experience. And then in the Alien, you get to walk through the entire wreckage of the ship, like from the movie, right? And then walk through the ship hallway in the dark where creatures may or may not come out at you. I mean, come on. So when you when you weigh these, and so just also for some points here, the Alien experience was about a 4-hour wait, and the Percy Jackson experience was 5 hours, but then they had to shut the line down. And so you show up in the day, and the press, this is the only reason I went to tell you about it, because press got our own time to go in, but I was talking to some of the regular people in line, which I like to do, to get a sense of, and the person who was front in line to get in for the first general attendance for regular people on Thursday said they had driven all night just to come to get in line for the Percy Jackson experience. And they have been waiting there literally all night and all morning to be the first regular guest to go in. And so, yes, Percy Jackson, there is a huge fandom for it. You can tell, that's what I mean. You can sense that. But maybe some of the other ones, it's just because you get a bunch of free stuff and it's really cool. So it's kind of, I think, figuring out where the passion line is. And then it gets back to the IP thing we just talked about. So, like, how much have you really seen for Percy Jackson? How much promotion? I haven't seen much. There's no Percy Jackson theme park.
Well, but I will go. So putting on my corporate hat, it's like, to answer that question, why do they invest this kind of stuff? Not just why are we here, or why were you there, but why do they invest this kind of money and time and effort into these kinds of activations? So it kind of goes back to what I believe it was Malcolm Gladwell who referred to people as sneezers, the people who are so excited about a brand, so excited about an IP, that if you tap into them, you'll be able to get them to spread the enthusiasm organically about your IP significantly faster. So if they get their lunchbox from Abbott Elementary, or they're wearing their cap from Percy Jackson, somebody will say, "Oh, where'd you get that cool cap?" And they immediately will gush about the experience. So that's exactly what. So that's one of the things they're targeting their core audience to get organic. Because if you can get, and you know this far better than I do, Philip, if you can get organic growth, that trumps paid media time and time again. It just expands exponentially. So you want to get the right people excited about your brand, excited about your IP, and you're right. We haven't heard a lot about Percy Jackson. So is this a way, and I will promise you that the amount they spent on that activation is significantly less than had they done a nationwide television spread
Yeah.
advertising. Now, did it
Well,
reach
yeah.
a wide enough audience? Who knows? But did it reach the people who can organically spread it like little veins of a tree? Absolutely. The other thing that is very beneficial in these kinds of activations is they can get data. Now, we all know that data can be used in any way you want it to. But you can say, there is such an impact, such an interest in this brand because at San Diego Comic-Con, we saw X number of people and our full capacity was this. We were at full capacity. People were waiting 5 hours in line. This sounds really impressive to investors. This sounds really impressive to people who want that, well, why are we putting money in this or why should we extend this? So if you've got some of that data, which, granted is a bit skewed, no one's going to wait 4 hours to see any of these things, any of these products in line, so it's unique, but it gives them data points and it targets the people who are going to talk about their brand the most.
I want to say data points with a story. And I think tying it back to our listeners, that is something I think if you could tap into that when you're trying to pitch your idea. So if we think about it, it's the same. These are going to be the same questions that our listeners would have to answer if they were pitching someone to put some sort of IP partnership at one of your attractions. The data question: how do we know this is going to work? How do we know people are going to show up to it? How do we know the money spent in investing the IP and then building the thing is people are going to want to do it? And to Scott's, I think it's kind of what Scott was saying. Like, I think my argument, because I'm a pure data, maybe not a pure data person, but my argument has always been you could just look at the numbers, right? Like my argument would have been we should know based off of the amount of numbers that we have for it. But I think something what Scott is saying, it's like when you can tell them, here are the numbers, but also here are pictures of fans all over social media who waited. The story I just told you about Percy Jackson, right? I could see somebody saying that in a boardroom, being like, this is why we should do a Percy Jackson experience at our attraction, because look at the fans that came out to Comic-Con. And even though in my brain, so my little brain is like, but if your theme park is in Tennessee and this is in San Diego, you're not necessarily going to get but it's about the story, about showing the passion behind it.
And that's exactly my point, saying that the data can be used to say anything you want it to. You can take that data and say we were sold out 100%, and then you can flip that data. If you don't want to do it, you flip that data on its head and says, this is really popular in California, but this is not going to fly here in Iowa.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, data is something. This is where Philip and I won't say disagree. We both recognize the importance of data, but I'm a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? Suspicious regarding data, because I've seen data used over the years. I've seen data used to say things that weren't necessarily accurate or true or didn't come to be true. Because they were able to take the data, frame it in a certain way. The data only works if you understand the full perspective, if you understand where it's coming from and what world it's living in. But with something like this, you can use this data and you can use these stories. And you're right, Philip, the photographs are essential when it comes to pitching a new idea. If you could say, look at the enthusiasm, look at the excitement at Comic-Con. And of course, I would be the one sitting in the back going, excuse me, do you have anything like that at a shopping mall? Because Comic-Con is targeting this audience 100,000%.
Yep, exactly. Well, and when you were talking, it was interesting thinking about the data. I think that the best thing, and I think I had this conversation with somebody, a reporter from Collider, parts of this conversation with a reporter from Collider in line for the fandom party, which was just I guess like a giant party to like just be excited about fan things. And it's I was like,
is fandom.
Well, also, I mean, the All American Rejects were playing also, so that was part of it. But I didn't save that because I'm old, and I was tired.
But fun. They don't do a bad show. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But so it's the idea of of testing, and we were talking about how Disney needs everything to be perfect. And that they almost can't afford to launch a movie or a thing that is not going to do well, because then they're under a microscope. Mm-hmm. And so they're so conservative with what they produce. And he was talking about how Netflix can make bets much wider because they're under less of a microscope. And basically he was like, you could have all the data, you could see all this data, but like you still need to test it. And the best thing to do is to do micro tests, is what we were talking about it. How do we do micro tests? And it's like, how do we do smaller testing to then get to, solution? And he's like, well, Netflix is able to produce so much faster, so they can get to a hit faster, and Disney has to do so much there's so much discussion about it because they can't afford to fail. And he's like, and that's the problem, is because there's no guarantee with this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I agree with that. And I think even for our listeners, that's also another takeaway, is what type of testing can you do to take the data and validate it in your region in a smaller scale if you can, or then expand it from there. And we were talking about, and what I guess my point was, YouTube can do that even better, because on YouTube, that's what you see. You see all these individual people who are putting out content, and then you figure out, YouTube itself figures out what content, is the best, because it has so many different sources. And an example I was saying is like, look, like to me, the runaway hit of this whole month is K-pop Demon Hunters. And they're nowhere at San Diego Comic-Con, but K-pop Demon Hunters, saying they went viral is an understatement. I mean, every human that's in a certain age range is talking about this show, and it's absolutely like it's bonkers. Like the fandom for this show is bonkers. And again, it's just one of those things that Netflix put out, and it just completely came out from left field. And it should have been at Comic-Con. It should be somewhere. It should be in a theme park right now.
Or it doesn't need to be at Comic-Con, because they've already beta tested it and it's already flying. It's the things that they need to test. It's the replace. I guess my point is, replace focus groups with pop-up experiences.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because focus groups are outdated and take too much time. You get real time feedback. And you talked about how long it takes to produce, and how Netflix can produce things so much quicker. I mean, a perfect example of that is, and I am not gonna get political on the show, but South Park, they can produce shows in 5 to 7 days. So they can be very topical, they can be bleeding edge when it comes to the topics that they're talking about, and that means that they're going to go very quickly. With K-pop Demon Hunters that you just mentioned, I am clearly not in that age demo, but it even pops up as like number 4 on my list of what I should be watching when I turn on Netflix. Yeah. And apparently it's again the algorithm, which I couldn't possibly understand, but it's everything from sci-fi to the Korean films that I've really liked, the animation. I love animation, so I watch a lot of animation, not necessarily that style, but it's feeding in all those little tendrils of information. And so I guess my point is, you're absolutely right. If I know in my septuagenarian age bracket, if I'm familiar with K-pop Demon Hunters, it's got to be big, and it's got to be blowing up in the right demographic.
Yep. And I think I like the idea that you said too about testing it. So like, can somebody do a test experience with something like K-pop Demon Hunter? Look at this trend, do a test pop up, or do some sort of pop up test of a thing, figure it out. And then even back to the examples, if somebody is waiting 4 hours, if you have people that are willing to wait 4 hours to walk through an alien wreckage thing, that could be a good haunted house. I mean, maybe people would pay for it, and so then the question becomes, would someone have paid to skip that line? And then you would know that you have like a business model.
And the next question is, you have to look at, would someone have paid to skip that line? Number one. Number two, how much would we have to pay to get that IP? Because you have to have that IP in order to get people to want to wait 4 hours. And I think I think Percy Jackson is a really good example, especially comparing it to K-pop Demon Hunters. The reason Percy Jackson is there, it needs sneezers. Yep. It needs people enthusiastic about the brand again. It's one of those brands that, in my opinion, from my perspective, never really popped through as a major player, but was always there. It's been
around for a while.
It's been around for a while. It's been films. There's a musical on Broadway, or was a musical on Broadway. There's a lot. It's taken many forms, but it's like they haven't quite hit their niche yet. So again, a pop-up like at San Diego Comic-Con is a perfect opportunity to kind of refine, test, see what works, see what people like. Are they there just for the free stuff, or is that
Yep.
just the way to get them in the door? There's a lot of opportunity there. I see, and a lot of organic opportunity. If I were there and I were part of that project, I'd be watching every moment. I'd be talking to people as they came out. I'd have cameras throughout the whole thing, figuring out where people are happy, where they're lingering, where they're moving forward. All of that. All that would be so
Yep.
part of it. It's fascinating to me, and I'm excited because, like I said, I'm speaking at Tampa Bay Comic Con, or Tampa Bay Comic Convention. August. I'll be there August 3rd, and I'm curious because it's not nearly the hugeness of San Diego Comic Con, but what's interesting to me is the celebrities that are on the list. They're having everything from pretty much any. I can't think of a single animation studio that isn't represented by voiceover artists. So they have all of the animation voice artists, and then they're having a Happy Days reunion. Henry Winkler, Don Most, Anson Williams are all going to be there. So it's kind of what we're talking about, I think, is that they're kind of sort of dipping their toe into, gosh, is this going to be of interest to this group? Or maybe we need, maybe they're looking at it going, we need an older crowd. They're more likely to spend money on vintage and nostalgia than a younger crowd is. I don't know, but we'll talk about that after I go. But I think these conventions, I guess my point is these conventions are a great opportunity to do some really good market research with a target audience.
Yeah, I think if you're doing it correctly, I think what you're saying is right. I think, again, it's all about the data, capturing the data, paying attention to what's going on. And for our listeners, also paying attention, again, to see what people are, again, what experiences they're excited about. I think is that's why I always like to go with the experiences, to figure out and to, like what you're saying. So really quickly, just to list the other things for our listeners so they're aware, and maybe they could go look, search up some of these videos. I didn't experience all these personally, but some of the ones that were very popular. The Predator bar, they had a bar experience with Predator, and they had like a little stage area where the Predator would come out and kind of do Predator things and whatever. So yeah, I don't know, but that's
Predator. I'm here to do Predator things.
I don't know. I saw some videos. I was like, okay, there was some alien language talking. Like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it was like last call, guys, that kind of thing. But so they got, obviously the alien thing was huge, and they did a day version, a night version. The King of the Hill was more popular than I expected, actually, which again, it's showing the research here, because they're rebooting King of the Hill, and so it was all set up for the next generation of King of the Hill, and you could go and you could get Alamo waters, so instead of the beer, it's a water can. I mean, it's really, they had some fun moments that you could recreate. And then obviously
Bobby's all grown up now.
So. Yeah. Yeah. My favorite line that they kept playing over and over was like, I don't know if I can kick your ass through Zoom, but I'm going to try. And it was good. Then they had the Lodge. Paramount set up like a Dexter little walk through his vault type of an experience, and they had a few other things that seemed not to have not as much traction. But I think some of the random runaway hits people weren't expecting. The Pac-Man Cafe. There was a Pac-Man Cafe. Oh my God, that. But again, we talk about this too. But like the idea of Pac-Man food and themed noodles. I mean, all these. I mean, people just went. Of course, people love food, and then it's Pac-Man. You love Pac-Man and food, and you get to eat it. It all fits together. They had a meet and greet with a little Pac-Man character that went wild.
It's like the Butterbeer bar. The Butterbeer Cafe.
Yes.
In the various Harry Potter stores.
There's so many. There was a Magic the Gathering experience where they're doing the Magic Gathering is partnering with Spider-Man for their new set, and so they recreated some of the town from the comic book from New York, and you could go to the Daily Bugle and pick up a paper, and you could go into the desk and take pictures and all this, so that there was those fun experiences. And then the Twisted Metal brought bumper cars that were kind of like looked like the cars, so you could do bumper car experiences. And then there are some smaller horror IPs where they just had horror characters, that the Strangers, or things like that, where the characters just kind of roamed around in areas. Those got popular. So there's so many. I mean, it's every corner you look through, but those are the ones I thought really broke through the noise that we kept seeing. People kept saying the wait times were just insane for
Right.
those.
Well, so basically, I think for our listeners, one of the key takeaways here is you may think that the Comic-Cons or the pop culture conventions are something that really doesn't directly tie to what you do, but they really are. You should go and check
They
it out,
are.
see what people are excited about, and also learn how to handle crowds, because that's another thing that they have to. And in some of them, I won't mention any names, in some that I've been to, they have no idea how to handle crowds, and it's a cluster.
Yep.
And in others, they're excellent at handling crowds, and it makes for a very exciting and connected experience. So go out and check them out. That's the most important thing, I think.
And the last example I'm going to have that's going to probably tie all this together. So I went to a panel for The Dragon Prince, and The Dragon Prince was written by the same people that did Avatar: The Last Airbender, and so it's kind of like it's very similar in like in theming. It's like coming of age, animation. It's all in terms of the same demographic, the same themes. It hits all those same things. Okay, so The Dragon Prince ended. It got picked up by Netflix and ended I don't know, a while ago. And the panel was basically they were just talking about a new announcement, and so I went to the panel to see what it was all about. And they put it in Ballroom 20, and so that's about 5,000 people, and it was packed. I mean, it filled up for that. And they basically announced that they had written and developed the next series, which would be The Dragon King, which is a continuation of The Dragon Prince, and it was going to be involving some of the voice actors from Avatar: Last Airbender. So Zuko is going to be in there playing the dragon. I mean, so they had the voice actors on stage, did some fun stuff. But here's the whole thing. The whole point, and I didn't even realize this till I was in it, the whole point of this panel was to get people signed up for the Kickstarter, to get the funding to produce the series. And you're just like, this is insane that it's this popular of a fandom and they need to get people on the Kickstarter. And he did even mention on the panel, they're like, we need to be able to prove to the executives that there's enough interest to invest in this, and this is what it's about, and this is why we need your help on the Kickstarter. And I'm like, this is crazy. To me, you're just like, this is crazy, because Netflix has the numbers and they could just look at the numbers. What is Avatar? What is The Dragon Prince? Like, they have the numbers, but they still need to.
But they've got
get the room.
They've got somebody sitting on their board going, yeah, well, these numbers are 4 years old or 3 years old. I don't know whether these are still good or not.
Exactly. And so, yeah, they're there, and they did a whole, but again, it was smart because they did a whole like cosplay incentive where they invited cosplayers, and they were like, if you have a good cosplay, we're going to give you these like cool buttons, when you show up to the panel. And so they packed the panel not only with super fans, but also with super fans who were dressed as the characters. And then they had camera people there getting videos of all the cosplayers, of everybody showing their love of Avatar and The Dragon Prince. And I mean, it was like, it was a whole thing. But to your point, it's all to tell the story behind the data.
Yep. It's a dog and pony show for the executives, is what it really ends up being.
Yep.
Let me rephrase that. It provides the material for the dog and pony show for the executives. Because if the executives, and again, I'm so jaded about this because I've been through it so many times, but if the executives were to show up at the actual panel, which they probably wouldn't, but they would go, well, look, none of these people would ever spend any money on this stuff. They're not the ones making the decisions. However, if you show video of people dressed as their characters and acting out their characters and using lines from, the brand and the IP itself, the boring executives who are sitting there with their arms crossed can't fight that too much. You have just proof, and then you see the numbers that are signed up for the Kickstarter, and it's just like, oh, okay, so I guess there is actually... Sometimes, it's funny. Sometimes studio executives, their job is to shoot things down.
Yep.
Their job is to say, here's why this won't work. And this is a great opportunity to get material that will counteract that thought.
Yeah, and great great, I think, takeaways also for the audience to think about. Like, that's similar to what we're doing at the park level as well, is to be pitching and showing that there is passion behind it and that people would invest and that guests would spend the money and go and participate in the activity.
Yeah, every time I do a new project, I have to show it. I have to show pictures of here's the kind of thing we're going to do. Here's the people who are going to it. Here's how popular it is, and then we have to go from there. So anyway, utilize these conventions because you don't all have to go to the biggest in the world. Go to the smaller ones. If you're in the Tampa Bay area, come by, say hello at the Tampa Bay Comic-Con Comic Convention. It's August 1st through the 3rd. I'll be there on the 3rd, and I'm doing a whole session on interactive entertainment and how it's growing and evolving. So, which you'd think has nothing to do with the comic convention, but again, it's expanding and it's embracing what we think of as live entertainment, what we think of as theme park, what we think of as immersive experience. So it's a whole show about that, and this has been a whole show about this because we're out of time.